Number 10. Barbed wire steel cage. As if being locked inside a steel cage against an opponent that wants to tear you apart isn't scary enough, how about wrapping barbed wire around the top of the cage? Well, that's exactly what happened in a WWE Championship match between the Big Show and JBL at No Way Out 2005. The pair were locked inside a cage, and to prevent JBL's cabinet from interfering or from JBL running away, the top of the cage was wrapped in barbed wire, making an attempted escape even more deadly. This match has only happened twice within the WWE, and turned out to be a bloody one, to no one's surprise. If falling from the cage wasn't bad enough, then cutting yourself on the barbed wire just topped things off. This match came to an end when Big Show chokeslammed JBL off the top rope, causing him to crash right through the ring, and somehow managed to crawl out to the floor to pick up the win before the Big Show could escape through the barbed wire. All of JBL's worst fears came true in this match, and it was a stipulation that was brought back for NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019 in the 3 Stages of Hell match between Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, in which Adam Cole walked away the victor after both men went flying off the top of the cage through a table. Hopefully this is a match type that the company uses again. Number 9. House of Horrors. What places this match low on this list is because the match type when announced had people speculating what could be, but the execution left people with their head in their hands. A House of Horrors match could have been something the likes you see in Saw, a brutal mystery lurking in each room of the house. However, in reality, we got spooky lighting, a lawnmower driving itself, a dirty house and some creepy kid stalls hanging from the ceiling. Not really the most terrifying of setups. This match took place between the late great Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton at WWE Payback 2017 pay-per-view. Even though Orton was the WWE champion at the time, the title was not on the line, and as the pair brawled throughout what looked like a rented house, the match somehow continued throughout the night after Wyatt trapped Orton under an old fridge, took a limo back to the arena, and had the match continue in the ring later that night, where Bray Wyatt would pick up the win but not the WWE title. The match execution and lack of title defense made no sense to fans, and it came off looking like a cheap horror film rather than something cutting edge. Thankfully, this is the only House of Horrors match in existence. Number 8. Ambulance match. The scary part about an ambulance match is that if you lose, you'll likely wake up in the hospital. The WWE has used this stipulation a number of times, and has often proved to be a brutal match stipulation, where anything goes, and the only way to win is to throw your lifeless opponent into the back of an ambulance. Many high spots have been seen during these types of matchups, such as Shane McMahon diving off the top of the ambulance against Kane at Survivor Series 2003, or John Cena hitting an attitude adjustment on Ryback to send him crashing through the roof of the ambulance during their 3 Stages of Hell match, or even Braun Strowman tipping an ambulance over. The match type is often used to blow off a deep personal feud, so you can be sure that nothing is held back. Whenever this match type is used, crazy bumps and violent moments are assured, and will no doubt end up with someone taking a trip to the hospital. Number 7. Last Ride match. The Last Ride match featured mostly throughout the early 2000s as a new Undertaker match stipulation. The match would go on to be featured only 2 times within the company's history and often proved to be quite entertaining, but nothing original. Similar to an ambulance match, but with a spooky theme, the idea was to throw your lifeless opponent into the back of a hearse to be driven on their last ride to the morgue. While no one was actually sent to the morgue, the idea of waking up there after a violent beatdown seems pretty scary in itself. One of the many Undertaker-style matchups, highlights from these matches were often brutal, and the match would usually be placed to help end the feud. Memorable moments feature Undertaker tombstoning Mr. Kennedy on the roof of the hearse at Armageddon 2006, or The Undertaker destroying JBL at No Mercy 2004 before outside interference from Heidenreich helped JBL pick up the win in the very first Last Ride match. What places this above the ambulance match is the fact you'd in kayfabe wake up in a morgue rather than a hospital. Number 6. Boiler Room Brawl. The Boiler Room Brawl was a unique match type throughout the Attitude Era, and often has fans remembering some of the crazy bumps that would be taken during these matches. The idea of the match would be that 2 wrestlers would fight inside of a boiler room underneath the arena where anything goes, rather than inside the ring. The first ever Boiler Room Brawl was between The Undertaker and Mankind at SummerSlam 1996. The idea for the match seemed an ideal fit at the time, being much more edgy and dark during the Attitude Era, always trying new things. and with Mankind originally dwelling in basements and dark areas, along with The Undertaker's mythical persona, this seemed like the perfect time to launch such a match up during their feud. Mankind would pick up the win, as the match seemed tailor-made for him, as he competed in all 4 Boiler Room Brawl matches in WWE history, whilst WCW also held 2 of their own. These matches were often darkly lit, at times making it hard to see, but the environments were put to good use, and often used to show how much punishment Mankind could take, a scary and dangerous atmosphere that often turned out some brutal results. Number 5. Boneyard Match. Being buried alive in an actual graveyard seems a pretty chilling outcome. We have only ever seen one of these matchups, although it being very similar to the buried alive matches, except taking place in a graveyard. The Undertaker defeated AJ Styles in his retirement match at WrestleMania 36, burying AJ Styles alive and riding off into the darkness on his signature motorcycle. The match was indeed brutal, with numerous weapons at their disposal, and The Undertaker himself picking up an injury after putting his hand through the window of a hearse. AJ Styles also took some big bumps during this match, being chokeslammed off the roof of a barn, and the match originally came together due to the pandemic forcing WWE to produce more cinematic style matchups, but when all was said and done, the match received high praise from fans and critics, and seemed a perfect send-off for the dead man. Although it was a shame his final match was never inside the ring, no doubt fans would love to see this style of match used once again if a character or feud ever seemed fitting of it. Number 4. Casket Match. Being locked inside a small space with your opponent then being able to do whatever they want to the casket whilst you're locked inside is something that would be the stuff of nightmares for many, especially if you're claustrophobic. Another Undertaker-style matchup, the casket match actually began its life as a one-off coffin match in the 1970s fought between Dusty Rhodes and Ivan Koloff. The coffin match was revived as one of the Undertaker's signature matches and first appeared on WWE television at the 1992 Survivor Series as a coffin match against Kamala. The match would go on to be featured for numerous years, with either The Undertaker or Kane competing in most. Iconic moments feature Kane setting fire to the casket with Undertaker locked inside at the Royal Rumble 1998, as well as Randy Orton and Bob Orton doing the same to The Undertaker at No Mercy 2005. Undertaker's dive over the casket to Mark Henry at WrestleMania 22, and Undertaker's spirit rising up from the casket after losing to Yokozuna at Royal Rumble 1994, or even Triple H destroying the casket with a sledgehammer whilst The Rock was locked inside after losing to The Undertaker. The match even went on to be featured in other promotions such as TNA, Lucha Underground and AEW, but would be referred to as a coffin match or a last rites match. Number 3. Inferno Match. With the only way to win an Inferno match being that you have to set your opponent on fire, there's not much else that could be this terrifying. The first ever Inferno match in WWE would feature Kane facing The Undertaker at Unforgiven 1998. The two perfect opponents for such a first ever style matchup, originally stemming from the Kayfabe Brothers storyline past, where the parents' funeral home parlour was burnt down. Paul Bearer challenged Undertaker on behalf of Kane to the Inferno match, and Undertaker would go on to pick up the win, but Kane would be the one to make this match his own, featuring in near all Inferno matches in the WWE, as it suited his character perfectly. Although his track record wasn't the best, often losing, having his arm, hand and foot set on fire. He would pick up his only Inferno match win against MVP at Armageddon 2006, with a pre-G friendly variation debuting at SummerSlam 2013 against Bray Wyatt in the Ring of Fire match. After Kane's retirement, Bray Wyatt would adopt the match type, facing Randy Orton in a Firefly Inferno match at TLC 2020 in a losing effort. This was the last televised Inferno match in WWE, but being set on fire is probably the most painful and gruesome fate that could await anyone. Number 2. Hell in a Cell. Perhaps WWE's most legendary and feared match type before it became oversaturated with its own pay-per-view, the Hell in a Cell match was simple by nature but barbaric in execution. A huge cell would cover the ring and ringside area, locking the wrestlers inside where there were no rules and anything goes. This match would be often saved for the biggest and most personal feuds before becoming a yearly pay-per-view of its own. Each cell match was memorable and tried to top the previous one up until it was featured yearly. Originally, the match wouldn't be featured often in WWE, with years between each appearance at times, adding to the draw and dangerous lure of the stipulation. Triple H's reactions to the match announcement were always gold and helped add to the fear of the match type, and for all good reason. From The Undertaker throwing Mankind off the top of Hell in a Cell, and even through the roof, to Shane McMahon jumping off the roof of the cell at WrestleMania, to Cactus Jack being backdropped through the cell and the ring, and even Kane debuting during the first ever Hell in a Cell match. The memorable moments are countless. Blood was often certain to be featured before WWE turned PG, and the lack of blood, story, and the bright red cage design eventually led to the lore of the match fading, and although there have been some brutal cell matches in recent times, the infamous Fiend and Seth Rollins cell match would be the final nail in the coffin, all up until Triple H pulled the pay-per-view and has reverted back to how the cell should be used, and that's on rare occasions for only the biggest and most heated of feuds. Number 1. Buried Alive. Topping off this list is probably a fear most people have, if not everyone, and that's to be buried alive. The way to win this match would be indeed to bury your opponent alive in a makeshift grave set up in the arena, and the thought of being beaten up so badly that you're thrown into an open grave and have to watch the dirt pile on top of you as the oxygen fades away would be terrifying. WWE also does a good job at making the audience believe that this was actually happening when the matches were featured, although the wrestlers in reality would just roll into an underground compartment for safety so they weren't crushed to death by dirt. The first Buried Alive match was again inspired by The Undertaker and featured him facing off against Mankind at the 1996 In Your House Buried Alive pay-per-view. Again, the two faced off in another first for the dark and sinister characters, similar to the Boiler Room Brawl encounter. Undertaker would pick up the win this time and feature in all 5 Buried Alive matches in WWE history, but only winning 2. Anything goes in these matchups, so violence and bloodshed were often showcased, with a dark and morbid ending awaiting the loser to the bout. The match was also used to write off The Undertaker's American Badass gimmick when he lost to Vince McMahon thanks to interference from Kane at Survivor Series 2003. The very last Buried Alive match featured Kane defeating The Undertaker at Bragging Rights 2010. And now, with both legends having retired, the match type seems to off as well. But as you know, never say never when it comes to the WWE, as this terrifying match may not be dead and buried just yet.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more wrestling content.